Not every fear in Courage the Cowardly Dog comes from something chasing him. Some of the worst fears in the show come from something much quieter, the possibility that the people he loves won't be there anymore. No curse, no monster with teeth, just the terrifying, ordinary fact that the people closest to you can be taken away by an enemy, by an accident, by time itself, or by something that already happened long before the story even started. This is a deep dive into that fear, the fear of loss, and how Courage the Cowardly Dog used it to write some of its most emotionally devastating episodes, hidden inside a show that looks, on the surface, like it's only interested in screaming and slapstick. Before getting into the episodes, it's worth being precise about what separates this fear from the others Courage explores. Fear of the unknown is about things that defy explanation. Fear of isolation is about facing a threat completely alone. Fear of loss is different. It's not about what's chasing you, and it's not about who's standing next to you while it happens. It's about the possibility, or the reality, that someone you love could be taken away entirely, permanently, irreversibly. That fear shows up in a few different forms across the series. Sometimes it's the fear of losing your own identity, along with the people you love. Sometimes it's grief that's already happened, sitting underneath the present story as unresolved trauma from the past. Sometimes it's the raw, present tense fear of watching someone you love come dangerously close to dying right in front of you. And sometimes it's the fear that drives protection itself. The theme underneath all of it is one of the oldest fears people carry. Love always comes with the risk of loss. The more someone matters to you, the more terrifying it becomes to imagine a world without them. Let's start with an episode that ties this fear directly to Courage's own sense of self, the shadow of Courage. At its core, this episode is about the fear of losing oneself and losing loved ones. And crucially, it treats those two losses as connected, not separate. Courage's identity, his entire sense of who he is deeply tangled up with his role as protector of Muriel. If he fails to protect them, it isn't just their loss he's afraid of. It's the loss of the only version of himself he knows how to be. That's a more complicated kind of fear than simple grief. It's the fear that if the people you love are gone, you don't just lose them, you lose the shape of your own identity. Courage isn't just scared of a world without Muriel. He's scared of who he'd be in that world. Now shift from a present tense threat to a wound that's already old. Remembrance of Courage Past. This episode deals with the loss of family and childhood trauma, meaning the fear here isn't about something that might happen. It's about something that already did. Courage is carrying grief and trauma from his past, long before any current episode's plot even begins. And that grief shapes how he responds to everything happening around him in the present. This is an important variation on fear of loss, because it isn't reactive, it's foundational. Courage's constant vigilance, his hyper-awareness of danger, his instinct to assume the worst, all of that becomes more legible once you understand there's an earlier loss sitting underneath it. It's revealing that the fear was never hypothetical to begin with. It already happened once, and that's precisely why Courage is so terrified of it happening again. If the previous episode was about grief that already happened, this one puts Courage directly inside the fear as it's unfolding. Muriel blows up. Courage is confronted with the direct possibility of Muriel's death, not as memory, not as trauma from the past, but as an active, present tense threat he has to watch happen in real time and try to stop. There's no ambiguity about what's at stake. There's no metaphor standing in for the danger. The fear is exactly what it looks like. What makes this version of the fear so effective is the helplessness built into it. He's fighting against the plain physical fragility of someone he loves, a threat that doesn't care how clever he is, only whether he's fast enough or lucky enough. This is the fear in its rawest form. Not the abstract idea of loss, but the specific ticking clock terror of watching it almost happen, powerless to guarantee the outcome, no matter how hard you try. Finally, there's a version of this fear that's less about loss already happening and more about the terror that drives courage to prevent it in the first place. Courage Meets Bigfoot. This episode centers on protecting family from danger, and it's worth pointing out that protection, as a behavior, doesn't come from nowhere. Courage's constant, exhausting vigilance throughout the entire series is powered by fear of loss. Every time he leaps into danger to save Muriel, or however reluctantly, Eustace, he's acting on the underlying fear that if he doesn't, he'll lose them. Protection is what fear of loss looks like when it's turned into action instead of dread. He isn't brave in the traditional sense. What he actually has is a fear of loss, strong enough to override his fear of everything else. The protection isn't separate from the fear. It's fear doing the only thing it knows how to do when the person you love is in danger. Step back for a second and consider why this particular fear cuts as deep as it does, even in a show built around goofy monster of the week horror. Curses can be broken, magicians can be outsmarted, even the sand whale, however massive, eventually goes back beneath the sand. But loss doesn't work like the show's other fears. It isn't something courage can permanently defeat, escape, or explain his way out of. At best, he can delay it, protect against it, one episode at a time. That's what separates this fear from the unknown and from isolation. It's the underlying stakes of loving anyone at all, and courage keeps returning to it because it's the fear that makes every other fear in the show actually matter. Across these 4 episodes, the show keeps arriving at the same quiet truth. Courage isn't really afraid of monsters. He's afraid of a world without the people he loves in it. Every curse he survives, every isolated night he gets through alone, every unexplainable creature he outlasts, all of it is really in service of one fear underneath all the others: not losing Muriel, not losing the family he has, fragile and imperfect as it is. That's the fear the whole show was built to protect against, one terrified, screaming episode at a time.